And our next speaker is Professor Maria Curtis from the University of Houston, Clear Lake, Texas. And she's an assistant professor of anthropology and cross-cultural studies at that university. And, well, to be brief, she does fieldwork both among Turkish women and in Morocco, and her current research is focused on the transnational participation of women adherents of the Gülen movement as they move between Turkey and the US. And I guess she's going to speak from that research dealing with both the US and Turkey. And I'm very happy that she's here, and I happily give her the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Okay, all right. I'm a little jet lagged, so I don't trust myself to remember all my points, so I'm probably going to read a little bit more than some of the other speakers, so I want to apologize in advance for that, I suppose. My paper outlines research on women's participation in the Gülen service movement, or Hizmet as it's also called. My data is drawn from informal interactions as well as formal interviewing and long-term ethnographic participation. Participant observation with both Turkish women and women of many other nationalities, both in various cities in Turkey and in the U.S., who either self-identify as adherents or who take part in some way in the public spheres that the movement directly and indirectly opens to them. I might have written a very different paper had I come to the Netherlands first. So this is mostly a paper about Turkish women and first-generation Turkish women in the United States. Okay. There can really be no generalizations made that succinctly spell out what a Gülen woman is, because she may do almost anything. My research offers some insight into how women become initially interested in the Gülen movement and what their experiences are as they continue on the path toward becoming an abla, or a big sister, who shares in the leadership and organizational responsibilities. The narratives I've collected cannot offer a single profile of what women's participation looks like. Instead, they examine the many ways that women take part in this transnational service movement. Let me get a little drink of water. In the last 12 years or so, I've had many exchanges and experiences with women in Turkey and Turkish American women from almost every region in Turkey now living in the U.S. who self-identify as taking part in Hizmet. In addition to Turks and Americans, many other ethnicities and nationalities can be found in this group. They are Armenian, Kurdish, Alevi, African American, European American, Mexican and Mexican American, Guatemalan American, Native American, Colombian, Irish, British, Australian, Turkmen, Russian, Azeri, Afghan, Uzbek, Albanian, Spanish, Ahizka, Tajik, Bosnian, Albanian, Macedonian, Kyrgyz, and some Arabs and Pakistanis, although those communities have been in the United States a bit longer and in larger numbers, so they traditionally have their own centers of worship. And of course, if I were giving a paper about women in the Gülen movement globally, I would of course need to include all of the European hyphenizations that would occur from second, third, and fourth generations here in the Netherlands, France, Belgium, and so on. In nearly every country where Hizmet has traveled, local people in those countries take part in the movement, and in women's groups, meaningful social interaction takes place across religious and ethnic lines. So one need not be a Muslim woman to take part in some of the activities. A great variety of women express their attachment to Hizmet in their own unique ways. For example, there are women entrepreneurs. Here's another long list. Entrepreneurs, teachers, opera singers, TV personalities, newspaper and magazine journalists, engineers of all persuasions, stay-at-home mothers, doctors, pharmacists, nurses, AIDS and cancer researchers, forensic psychologists, and medical personnel trained to help trauma victims during times of international natural disasters, such as those who work at Kimse Yok-mu and other similar organizations. We've also got daycare administrators, Quran school teachers, dormitory managers, and university professors. So well established and developed are Hizmet circles in Turkey that one could say for at every level of education, for every region, for every level of spiritual attachment, ranging from the decidedly secular to those who spend a great portion of their time as practicing Muslims, one will find institutions and activities that appeal to clusters of women with similar educational and career backgrounds. So we've heard today the idea of loose configurations, loose groups of people. I would say the same thing, of course, apply to women with different interests and different educational backgrounds. I guess what is unique about these women perhaps is how they feel about each other. This is very hard to express in English because we lack words like ruhtash or spiritual soulmate, for example. There's a very deep spiritual connection they share, and it binds them as yol arkadaşlar, or friends on the same path. Whereas society may have placed them in distinctly different linguistic, ethnic, class, and educational backgrounds, Hizmet cuts across these divisive social categories. Within Hizmet, one will find women who take on more outwardly religious dress, and one will also see women who might have left behind a jemaat that they felt might have been very constraining. I think this is something that we don't really hear a lot about. I mean, there are women from, let's say, maybe much more conservative groups that are attracted to the Gülen movement because it is something that they feel is much more mainstream or open to women. We will find educated women who decide to live among people who have had almost no education. We will find, conversely, that Hizmet scholarships provide education for those girls, for example, for whom it would never have been possible to study at all. We will find people of great wealth giving away their possessions, as Dr. Iba has talked about. A lot of those are also women, wealthy women who give their himet. And we'll also find women who've come from very, very poor circumstances who've, let's say, climbed the social ladder, as it were, having been in Hizmet in some way. So all of this is to say that Hizmet is really in the middle. It's mainstream. And more importantly, it creates a new middle class, if you will, by bringing people who see themselves as ruhtaşlar, or spiritual soulmates, and not necessarily according to their perceived social status. Within the Gülen movement, one will find women with a very wide range of understandings of Islamic modesty. With regard to Turkey, where the movement has had the longest time to develop across multiple generations, one will find a diversity of opinion with regard to Gülen-affiliated institutions and groups of women who volunteer and work in these institutions. The rules regarding the wearing of the headscarf are less important in such places, and women from across the religious spectrum become accustomed to working together as professionals. Outside of Turkey, the situation is different from what I've seen in the United States, as women in Hizmet are newly landing in places such as the United States. They may be involved in establishing common support networks and building their infrastructures all over again from the ground up, often while in their young childbearing years, also while working on second language skills. In Turkey and in the United States, and I suppose probably in the Netherlands and other places as well, child care facilities have become a priority. Child care cooperatives between women, informal community-based child care that is offered so that women might attend community events, as well as more formalized state-regulated paid daycare, which allows women to work full-time, all exist side by side, allowing women a variety of choices. Rather than asking, what is the role of women in the Gülen movement, a more interesting question might be, what will the role of women be in the years to come as their choices continue to expand? Similar modern piety movements have been seen in other parts of the Muslim world, and they have articulated some of the same themes around women reclaiming the rights afforded to them in the Quran and the Hadith, which women often feel exceed those offered by modern society. Since the 1970s and 1980s, these piety movements have been labeled in many ways. Here are some of the ways they're labeled. Islamic feminists, or believing women in Islam, as opposed to Muslim feminists, which are different, as opposed to progressive Muslim women, or born again or veiled again Muslim women. A lot of these kinds of terms. While one of these terms might apply to other social movements, or some of these other piety movements, we can see a bit of all of this in Hizmet. There's not really any one reason or any one profile that women have before taking part in Hizmet. There's no single style of dress, and beyond the notion of self-improvement, very broadly defined, there's not one lifestyle that is promoted over others. One may find many clusters, again, of similarities in behavior in different geographic areas, but put together side by side, these clusters can appear very, very different from each other. And to give you an example, in Istanbul I was being introduced to different women's groups. Some of them had no idea that the others existed. It was quite interesting, and the women looked very different and had very different activities. Very, very interesting. Okay, Hizmet offers multiple forms of support to girls, and it continues to offer that support into adulthood. For every stage of life, from daycare to elementary school to middle school to high school to university, another long list, I apologize, dormitory, study centers, hospitals to mental and physical rehabilitation institutions, nursing homes, television and media outlets, there is perhaps not a moment in one's life or a problem for which one would not find some form of assistance. Women often encounter the movement while in school, and then mature in the movement spiritually, personally, and professionally while having ablalar, or big sisters, who served as personal role models, who supported them through exams, marriage proposals, early motherhood, and navigating careers as women. Okay, it's important to note that when women take part in Hizmet, it's a choice, and they have the choice to be more or less active at different times in their lives, or to not take part at all. There might be some women who are very active with sohbet groups or ders groups in Turkey, for example, when they're going to study centers. And then little by little they might lose touch with those people, or stay in contact for the Bayram, for big holidays and so forth. There's not any really one way that people stay attached or stay active in Hizmet. It's different from person to person. What one is interested in may shift over time, and one's form of involvement can also change. As girls become women, they feel a sense of wanting to help other girls as a way of honoring the women who helped them, and thus the cycle of what one informant called adoptive motherhood continues from one age set to the next. While some see women's activities from the outside, they may assume that there's an enforced gender segregation in what some social scientists call parallel gender publics. Some people might see this as an indication of a lack of inclusion for women.